In the 1940s and 50s, Spade Cooley was a king. He was known as the king of Western swing. His music got thousands dancing, and television made him a star with chart-topping hits and a hit TV show. Millions loved his smile and his music, but what they didn't know was that behind that famous smile was a dark secret. In 1961, his career came to a brutal end when he was convicted of torturing and murdering his wife, Ella May. Today we delve into the story of how a beloved entertainer became one of Hollywood's most notorious serial killers. To understand the meteoric rise of Spade Cooley, you have to understand the world that created him. It was a world born of dust and desperation. The 1930s and 40s saw one of the largest internal migrations in American history. The Dust Bowl, a catastrophic combination of drought and economic depression, drove hundreds of thousands of families from Oklahoma, Arkansas, Texas, and Kansas. They packed their meager belongings into jalopies and headed west, chasing a rumor, a dream, a promise of sunshine and oranges advertised on handbills. California. These migrants, often derogatorily called Okies, were not always welcomed. They were a people displaced, looked down upon as poor and uneducated. But they brought something with them that would change the cultural landscape of the West Coast forever: their music. This wasn't the lonesome traditional country music of the Appalachian Hills. This was a new, vibrant hybrid. It was music for dancing, for forgetting your troubles on a Saturday night. It had the heart of country, the soul of the blues, and the sophisticated rhythm of big band jazz. They called it Western swing. And its undisputed god, its founding father, was a man named Bob Wills. With his band, the Texas Playboys, Wills created a sound that was a uniquely American cocktail: a little bit of country fiddle, a dash of New Orleans jazz, the crooning of Bing Crosby, and the driving beat of a dance band. The music was complex, improvisational, and utterly irresistible. It was the soundtrack of the dance halls that sprang up across California to entertain the legions of transplanted Southerners. It was into this world, this fertile ground of cultural fusion and Saturday night release, that Spade Cooley would emerge. But he wasn't in Texas or Oklahoma. He was in Hollywood. California in the 1940s was the land of make-believe, the dream factory. And Cooley, with his sharp ambition and undeniable charisma, understood something essential about this new world. He understood that it wasn't just about the music anymore. It was about the show. In a state built on image and stardom, the next king of Western swing wouldn't just be a musician. He'd have to be a movie star. Spade Cooley was determined to be that star, and for a time he shone brighter than anyone. He built his kingdom in the heart of the dream factory, never realizing that the same Hollywood artifice that would make him a king would also hide the rot that was festering within. He was born Donald Clyde Cooley in 1910 in Grand, Oklahoma. His family was part of the Great Migration, moving to California when he was a boy. Music was in his blood. His father was a fiddle player, and Donald picked up the instrument with a natural ease. He was a prodigy, his fingers flying across the strings, able to coax both heartbreaking sorrow and foot-stomping joy from the instrument. The origin of his famous nickname, Spade, is a story in itself. As a young man, he was a ferocious poker player, and after a particularly incredible winning streak, where he won 3 straight pots with flushes, all in the suit of spades, the name stuck. It was a name that suggested luck, a certain roguish charm, and a hint of danger. It fit him perfectly. Like many aspiring artists in the 1930s, Cooley was drawn to Hollywood, a booming entertainment hub amid the Great Depression, where thousands of people migrated from impoverished rural areas like Oklahoma to California in search of opportunity, hoping to make a fortune in the new film and music industries. But his path to stardom was not a smooth one, requiring perseverance and adaptability in a fiercely competitive environment where only those with multiple talents and a willingness to work odd jobs could survive. His first jobs were outside the mainstream film industry, mostly uncredited extras, reflecting the reality that many emerging artists had to start at the bottom to learn their craft. He was a talented horseman, with horsemanship honed from his ranch childhood, and his handsome, elegant appearance, tall, jet black hair, charming smile, made him well suited to westerns, a genre that dominated American cinema at the time thanks to the appeal of icons like Tom Mix and Gene Autry, emphasizing the heroic, romantic image of the cowboy. He found work as a stuntman in dangerous action scenes, requiring high endurance and technique, and most notably as a stand-in for the ballad-singing cowboy superstar Roy Rogers. This experience was his real university, not only in acting techniques, but also in the art of personal image building in the entertainment industry. He observed carefully, he learned systematically from the way Rogers cultivated his on-screen image through colorful cowboy costumes, confident gestures, and a sweet voice to create intimacy, how he connected with audiences through live performances in films, establishing himself as a family-friendly icon, to how he built a lasting brand by combining country music with film, creating a diversified business model that Cooley would later adopt. Cooley absorbed all of these lessons deeply, not just on the surface, but also analyzing how they contributed to lasting success in a volatile industry. He was not content to live in the shadow of others, always looking to push the boundaries, to assert himself, and he knew he was destined to shine. His big break in the music world came in the early 1940s, specifically around 1941 to 1942, when Western swing was flourishing in California as a cultural reaction to the Texas and Oklahoma migration, bringing folk music with him to adapt to urban life. He joined a popular Western swing band led by another cowboy, Jimmy Wakely, a singer, actor, and musician who had worked on Western films, and the group, called the Jimmy Wakely Trio, played at Los Angeles nightclubs and radio stations, playing a lively swing-inspired rhythm inspired by Bob Wills, but adapted for an urban audience. Cooley's fiddle was explosive, not only in its virtuosity with its soaring fast notes, but also in its ability to draw larger crowds and get regular gigs. His charismatic stage presence, with his dapper dress sense, confident gestures, and ability to interact with the audience, quickly made him a favorite. But Spade was no pure band leader. He was a natural leader, an innovator who sought to improve the music by integrating big band elements with larger orchestras, and he had his own vision for Western swing, to turn it into a full-blown entertainment genre, combining music, dance, and theatrical elements to compete with the big swing bands like Benny Goodman. When Wakely left to pursue a bigger film opportunity in Hollywood around 1943, signing with Monogram Pictures and launching a solo career with hits like One Has My Name, The Other Has My Heart, Cooley strategically seized the opportunity. He took over the band, reshaped it in his own image, and began building his empire. His chosen throne room was the Venice Pier Ballroom in Santa Monica. It was here that Spade Cooley and his orchestra truly exploded onto the scene. What he was doing was revolutionary. While Bob Wills was the revered traditionalist, Cooley was the modernist, the showman. He expanded the size of his band, creating a lush, sophisticated sound that was unlike anything else. He had the standard fiddles and guitars, but he added clarinets, trumpets, and even unheard of in country music, a harp. His band could swell to over 20 musicians, creating a powerful wall of sound. He hired the best musicians he could find, including the brilliant steel guitarist Joaquin Murphy, and he demanded perfection. But the real magic was Cooley himself, a brilliant performer with an uncanny ability to command the stage, turning each performance into a mesmerizing festival of music and dance, reflecting a perfect blend of musical skill, charisma, and personal branding. On stage, he was an energetic dervish, moving like a professional dancer while playing the violin, often dressed in a resplendent cowboy outfit of gold-embroidered shirts, tight jeans, and wide-brimmed hats, creating the image of the self-proclaimed king of Western swing. He would conduct his massive orchestra with his violin like a wand, dance with quick steps inspired by traditional square dancing, smile brightly to create intimacy, and connect with the crowd with an almost hypnotic charisma through direct interaction, such as inviting the audience to join in, singing along or dancing, turning the performance into a community event rather than just passive listening. He wasn't just playing music, he was orchestrating a total experience, combining visual, sonic, and emotional elements to rival the big swing bands from New York and Chicago, helping Western swing become a local cultural icon in Los Angeles. In 1944, he broke the all-time attendance record at the Venice Pier Ballroom, a famous multi-thousand capacity venue in Santa Monica, where big bands like Harry James had previously held attendance records, thanks to the swing jazz craze of the 1930s and 1940s. By drawing thousands of people each night, surpassing rivals like Bob Wills at an earlier Battle of the Bands in 1942, where Cooley had demonstrated his ability to draw larger crowds with his dynamic style and large orchestration. Thousands of fans would fill the ballrooms each night, dancing until the early hours to the fast-paced swing rhythms, with dances adapted from cowboy traditions, creating a festival atmosphere that lasted for hours and helped boost the local economy. It was during this period, specifically in December 1944, that he recorded his signature song, Shame on You, a song written by Cooley with lyrics about the pain of betrayed love, sung by Tex Williams' deep baritone voice, combining a lively fiddle with a catchy swing rhythm. And released in 1945 on OK Records, the song became a smash hit, dominating not only the country charts but also the pop charts thanks to its radio and jukebox appeal, with cover versions by Red Foley and Bill Boyd also helping to push it up the charts. It topped the country music charts for 9 consecutive weeks according to Billboard, becoming the top-selling country single of 1945. The success of Shame on You catapulted Cooley to national stardom, with record sales and tours throughout California, and attracted the attention of Hollywood, who allowed Cooley to appear in musical shorts, such as Spade Cooley, King of Western Swing, 1945. A prominent music promoter, Foreman Phillips, attempted to capitalize on the craze, staging a battle of the bands between Spade Cooley and Bob Wills in 1942 at the Venice Pier, as a showdown for the title of King of Western Swing. While Wills was the favorite and pioneer of the genre from Texas with the Texas Playboys and hits like New San Antonio Rose, it was Cooley, a handsome, flamboyant showman with movie star looks and outstanding stage presence, who won the popular vote in subsequent polls, including a 1944 to 1945 poll, where he beat out both Benny Goodman and Harry James to be declared the King of Western Swing. From then on, he relentlessly promoted himself as the one and only king through posters, records, and performances, cementing his personal brand with his kingdom firmly established in the music world, with his performances and recordings generating hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. Cooley set his sights on a new frontier, the new and vibrant medium of television in the late 1940s, when television was exploding in America with the number of receivers doubling every year and local stations taking the lead in live entertainment. In June 1948, he debuted the Hoffman Hayride on KTLA, a local Los Angeles station, sponsored by Hoffman Television and also known as the Spade Cooley Show, with a format that combined musical performances, comedy, dance, and guest interviews, making it one of the first variety shows on American TV. The show was an immediate success, broadcast live from the Santa Monica Ballroom, with Cooley's orchestra at the center, attracting celebrity guests such as Frank Sinatra, Dinah Shore, and Tennessee Ernie Ford, and achieved record ratings of more than 75% of the Los Angeles area TV audience every Saturday night, according to early Nielsen reports, thanks to its high-quality production with live cameras and live sound. It was one of the highest-rated shows in Los Angeles television history, regularly reaching more than 75% of the audience, and was expanded to coast-to-coast broadcasts on the Paramount Television Network in the early 1950s, winning local Emmys in 1952 and 1953 for Best Music Program. Every week, families would gather around their tiny televisions to watch Spade and his all-star cast of musicians and singers perform Western swing hits, establishing the family television viewing habit and helping to popularize the genre to a wider audience. He was no longer just a conductor, but a media mogul, a beloved television personality whose smiling, friendly image lit up homes across Southern California, while diversifying his revenue through advertising contracts and short film production, reaching the absolute pinnacle of success. He was rich, famous, and adored by millions, but as his public star soared to unimaginable heights, his private world was beginning to crumble into a lightless abyss of paranoia, jealousy, and violence. The public persona of Spade Cooley was that of a charming, family-friendly entertainer, but behind the smile and the rhinestone-studded suits was a man unraveling, a man consumed by deep-seated insecurities and a terrifyingly volatile temper. The story of his downfall is inextricably linked with the story of his wife, Ella Mae Evans. She was a beautiful, talented singer who had been a featured vocalist in his orchestra. They married in 1945 at the very peak of his rise to fame. On the surface, they were a golden couple, the king of Western swing and his lovely queen. They had 3 children, and their life seemed to be the embodiment of the Hollywood dream. But the reality was a nightmare. Cooley was a chronic alcoholic, and his drinking exacerbated his worst traits. He was pathologically jealous and possessive of Ella Mae. He controlled every aspect of her life, from who she could talk to where she could go. His jealousy wasn't just directed at anonymous admirers. It fixated on the ghosts of his own past. Despite his own rampant infidelities, he became obsessed with the idea that Ella Mae was cheating on him. He forbade her from speaking to old friends, and he would fly into a rage at the slightest perceived slight. One of his most persistent and bizarre delusions centered on his old boss, the man he had once been a stand-in for, Roy Rogers. Cooley became convinced, with no evidence whatsoever, that Ella Mae had been having an affair with Rogers for years. This obsession grew into a full-blown paranoia that poisoned their entire relationship. He would interrogate her for hours, demanding confessions to infidelities that never happened. The pressure of maintaining his empire was also taking a severe toll. By the mid-1950s, the musical landscape was changing. The Western swing craze was fading, replaced by the raw energy of rock and roll and the slicker Nashville sound. Cooley's television show was eventually canceled. He tried to pivot, investing in disastrous business ventures, including a bizarre plan to build a massive television and recreation park called Water Wonderland in the middle of the Mojave Desert. The project bled him dry, and as his finances dwindled, his paranoia and rage intensified. He suffered a major heart attack in 1960, a physical manifestation of the immense stress he was under. His abuse of LMA escalated from emotional and verbal to brutal physical violence. He would beat her mercilessly, often in front of their children. She tried to leave him multiple times, but he would always lure her back with tearful apologies and lavish gifts, promising to change. She was trapped in a classic cycle of abuse, isolated from her friends, and terrified of the man she had married. In early 1961, Ella May found the courage to act. She told a friend she was going to divorce Spade. She had had enough. On March 23rd, she met with him, presumably to finalize their separation. The details of what happened next are the stuff of nightmares, pieced together from the horrific testimony that would later emerge in court. On April 3rd, 1961, Spade Cooley, the beloved TV star, dragged a beaten and broken Ella May to their home in Willow Springs, California. Their 14-year-old daughter, Melody, was there. What she was about to witness would destroy her family and shock the world. For hours, Spade subjected Ella May to a sadistic and prolonged torture session, all while forcing their daughter to watch. He was in a drunken, paranoid rage, screaming about her supposed affairs. He slammed her head against the floor again and again. He crushed her body with his knees. He snuffed out cigarettes on her skin. He beat her with his fists until his hands were raw. Melody pleaded with her father to stop, screaming that he was killing her mother. At one point, he turned to his daughter and chillingly said, "You're next." Finally, after hours of this unspeakable brutality, Ella May's heart gave out. She was dead. Spade Cooley, the king of Western swing, had murdered his queen in the most monstrous way imaginable, with their own child as his captive audience. The smiling mask had finally come off, revealing the monster that had been lurking beneath all along. The trial of Spade Cooley was a media sensation, a grim and sordid circus that laid bare the horrific reality of his private life. The prosecution's case was built around the brave and devastating testimony of his 14-year-old daughter, Melody. In a packed courtroom, she recounted detail by horrifying detail the hours of torture her mother had endured at the hands of her father. She described the beatings, the burns, the chilling threats. Her testimony was the emotional core of the trial, a child forced to condemn her own father to save herself. Cooley's defense was as theatrical and bizarre as his stage persona. His lawyers argued that he couldn't be held responsible for his actions because of his failing heart. In a moment of pure courtroom drama, Cooley himself staged a collapse on the witness stand, clutching his chest and feigning a heart attack, forcing the trial to be delayed. But the jury saw through the act. The evidence was overwhelming. Melody's testimony was unshakable. On August 21st, 1961, after just over 9 hours of deliberation, the jury found Spade Cooley guilty of first-degree murder. The judge sentenced him to life in prison. The king of Western swing was going to die behind the walls of the Vacaville Medical Facility. The immediate consequence of Spade Cooley's crime was the complete and total erasure of his musical legacy. In the wake of the horrific trial, radio stations stopped playing his records. His television shows were locked away in vaults. His name became synonymous not with joyful dance music, but with brutal, sadistic murder. He was, for all intents and purposes, canceled in the most extreme way imaginable. An entire generation of music fans grew up without ever hearing of the man who was once bigger than Bob Wills. a man who was a pioneer of television and a titan of West Coast culture. He became a ghost, a dark secret in the history of country music. The story of Spade Cooley is a story about domestic violence. At a time when the abuse of a spouse was often dismissed as a private family matter, the Cooley trial dragged the brutal reality of it into the public spotlight. The horrific details of what Ella May endured forced people to confront a truth they would rather ignore. While it would take decades for the culture to truly reckon with domestic violence, the Cooley case was a landmark moment, a horrifying example that could not be swept under the rug. It highlighted the cycle of abuse, the isolation of the victim, and the tragic, ultimate consequences of unchecked male rage and possessiveness. His life also serves as a dark parable of the American dream. He was a self-made man who clawed his way up from poverty to the absolute pinnacle of success. He had everything: money, fame, a beautiful family. And he destroyed it all because of his own inner demons. His story is a testament to the fact that external success means nothing if it is built on a foundation of internal rot. He achieved the dream, and it turned into a nightmare of his own making. In the end, his most enduring legacy is not his music, but the brutal lesson of his life, that the monster you refuse to confront within yourself will eventually consume everything you love. When Spade Cooley died backstage at the Oakland Playhouse in 1969, his heart finally stopping, it was a strange and surprisingly fitting end. To understand the irony of the moment, we have to look at the context. It was no ordinary concert. Cooley was on a 72-hour leave from prison, a privilege granted so he could perform at a benefit concert for the Alameda County Deputy Sheriff's Association. A convicted murderer, just 3 months away from full parole, was playing for law enforcement itself. That night, he borrowed a violin and took the stage for the first time in nearly a decade. For about 20 minutes, he resurrected the old magic. The crowd of about 3,000, mostly police officers and their families, rose to their feet and applauded. Moved to tears, he thanked him and walked backstage. According to witnesses, he told an old friend, "It feels like I've been reborn." Those were his last words. Minutes later, still receiving congratulations, he collapsed from a massive heart attack and died almost instantly. He died to applause, the one thing he had craved all his life, the narcissistic supply that had fed both his genius and his rage. It was a final fleeting taste of the glory he had lost. The public and fan reactions to his death were as complex as his life itself. For a small group of former fans who remembered only his music, Cooley's death was seen as a tragedy. They saw a misguided genius who had paid for his sins and deserved a second chance. For them, his death after a final round of applause was a sad and somewhat poetic finale, a farewell to a great artist. But much of the public, who had never forgotten the brutality of the murder of Ella May Evans, had little sympathy. They felt that his pardon had been an insult to the victim's memory. His sudden death was seen not as a tragedy, but as a fitting closure. It ensured that the killer would never live the life of freedom he had robbed his wife of. Ultimately, Spade Cooley's death became the final act, cementing his complex legacy. It was not a peaceful departure into oblivion, but a shocking event, ensuring that his story, his music, his glory, his crimes, and his downfall would forever be told as one of Hollywood's most terrifying cautionary tales.